That's okay. Let's talk about what happened to Crystal.
I don't know.
Why wouldn't you tell us about the land up north? Why don't you tell us about that? No, we got all land up there. We never go up there. Why don't you tell us about that? The trailers.
And that you were there, and that the land is part of the trust that your grandpa owns.
Yeah, and that Crystal's phone pinged.
Grandpa,
Right in that
Sam, Grandma, Rachel.
Weird. You were up there with her, tooling around, together, and then she was missing, and her phone pings to your land that you won't even admit exists. Maybe not your land, but you know what I'm talking about.
Last time we were there, when we were together, and I brought it
Yeah,
back.
I believe that. That I believe. That I believe.
And we came back.
That I don't believe.
Yeah, we did.
You did. You came back.
We both came back.
Well, yeah. Only you really know what happened, so, I mean, fill us in.
I'm serious. We both came back.
Well,
Tell us about that.
Yeah. Then where is she now?
I don't know. I dropped her off in Kleinman at the church.
No, you didn't, because we didn't find her body laying in the parking lot.
I don't know where she is.
Is she in your burn
You know.
pit?
What?
Was she in your burn pit?
No.
Was she in your suitcase?
What? It was just a suitcase inside a suitcase.
Okay. Nothing else in there?
No.
Did you bury her up north?
No.
Did you bury her up north on your land? On the land up there? On that 40 or 80 acres up there? Did you bury her up there?
What?
Did you bury Crystal up there?
I don't know where she is.
They have cadaver dogs that can find
They
her.
can search it.
Well, they are.
Wait. You said you stayed one night up there, right? Because on the 11th, I have this vehicle coming back from the Dells. You're clearly not home. Those words came from a detective sitting across a small table from a man named Zachariah Rasch, 11 hours into an interview that would end with his entire story in ashes.
Why not look to see if she was there? She was not there.
Let's back up.
Came
Let's back up. The first time, Zach,
You told us you were up there.
when we just got to this point, which again I appreciate it. I'm glad that we're getting there, okay? Because again, we're trying to piece this on your end. We have our end. I'm trying to get your story. You're up there with her.
Yes.
Something happens.
Nothing happened.
Yes, it does.
No, we came back. Yes, we did come back.
While you were up there, what happened?
Nothing happened.
Okay, so we know you said you went to the
Assuming
Dells.
something happened and nothing happened.
You said you went to the Dells with
Yes.
her. You originally told me we just went to the Dells for the day and then we came home. Right? And then that story changed and we improved on dates and all that. There was other things going on there. Again, now you're telling us you're up there with her.
Yes.
What did you do? And I don't want to hear nothing. What did you guys do? Talk me through from the start to the middle to the end.
Everything you do.
Everything.
Went out to eat.
Rasch had just told police, calmly, that he'd spent one quiet night at a family camper in Adams County before returning home to work his regular shift. It was a simple story. A boring story. The kind of story a guilty man tells when he thinks no one is really checking. Someone was checking. Detectives laid a set of license plate images on the table. A Mitsubishi Eclipse, his Mitsubishi Eclipse, photographed in Milwaukee. Photographed at the Wisconsin Dells. On days he swore he was home. For a moment, Zachariah Rasch just sat there. Then he said something that should chill anyone listening. He said he had fully forgot about entire days. Entire locations. As if a grown man could simply misplace 48 hours of his own life. He hadn't misplaced them. He had spent them building an alibi that was about to collapse in real time. In that room, on camera. Because somewhere in those missing days was a woman named Crystal. A mother. A daughter. A sister. A woman who had finally, after years of struggle, started building a life that looked like her own. And by the time detectives sat Zachariah Rasch down in that interview room, Crystal hadn't been seen in weeks. This is the story of how a small Wisconsin sheriff's office pulled apart a killer's timeline hour by hour, bite by bite, receipt by receipt, and how a search of a smoldering burn pit on a quiet piece of rural land would answer a question no family should ever have to ask. Before we go further, if you're watching this from somewhere far from Wisconsin, drop your city or country in the comments. It's genuinely interesting to see how far these stories travel. This is the case of Crystal Rasch. To understand what was taken from Crystal, you have to understand who she was becoming. Crystal was 37 years old, living in the small, rural community of Kleiman, Wisconsin, a place of quiet roads and close-knit families. She was a mother of 5 children, and in the months before her disappearance, people who knew her described someone actively rebuilding her life, not falling apart in it. Court testimony would later reveal a painful detail. Crystal's children had, at one point, been removed from her and Zachariah's care. Rather than retreating from that loss, those who worked with her described a woman who stayed involved. She remained present in her children's lives during those difficult weeks, showing up, staying connected, refusing to disappear from their world even while the state had drawn boundaries around it. She was also, by every account, working toward independence. She was looking into housing of her own. People close to her said she seemed hopeful about what was ahead. Hopeful is a word that gets used carelessly in true crime storytelling, but here it carries real weight, because Crystal was in the middle of a divorce. She had filed to leave her marriage to Zachariah Rasch, and by the account of those who watched her in those final weeks, she was not shrinking back from that decision. She was stepping into it. Family members would later describe her as someone who checked in. Someone who was, in the words of her foster and adoptive mother, normally very responsive. That detail matters more than it might seem, because it means the people who loved Crystal knew, almost immediately, that something was wrong. When a woman who always answers suddenly goes silent, the people around her feel it long before the paperwork catches up. There was also fear underneath that hope. According to later court filings, Crystal had told people close to her that Zachariah had harassed her in the past, and she wanted to make sure he wouldn't do anything to her. She was not a woman walking blindly into danger. She was a woman who saw the risk clearly enough to name it out loud, and who kept moving forward anyway, toward a life she was trying to build for herself and her children. Zachariah Rasch, 43 at the time, was Crystal's estranged husband. On the surface, in the account he gave to friends, family, and eventually police, he was simply a man whose wife had walked away and told him she needed space. But underneath that surface, something far darker had already been taking shape for months. Long before Crystal vanished, Zachariah's phone was quietly building a record of his own intentions. In April of 2024, he searched his device to find out whether police could trace an IP address. Not a random curiosity, a specific, targeted question asked by a man who was already thinking about being tracked. Then, on May the 28th, just weeks before Crystal disappeared, his search history took a turn that's almost unbearable to say out loud. He searched whether a person dies instantly from a gunshot to the head, and in the same search session, whether a 9mm round would kill an animal if fired into its head. An animal, not a person. Prosecutors would later point to that phrasing as a chilling piece of psychological evidence, a suggestion that in Zachariah's mind, Crystal had already been reduced to something less than human, something disposable, long before he ever raised a weapon. And then, on June the 6th, just 5 days before Crystal was last seen alive, he searched for information about widows' benefits. How long a person can collect them. Not grief. Not guesswork. Logistics. This is what the mask of normalcy so often hides in cases like this one. To Crystal, to her family, to anyone watching from the outside, Zachariah may have simply looked like a husband going through a hard divorce. But in the quiet, private space of his own phone, he was already asking the questions of a man planning an ending. June the 11th, 2024, would be the last day anyone saw Crystal Rasch alive. Surveillance footage placed her with Zachariah that day at a Culver's restaurant and later at a Goodwill store in Oconomowoc. Ordinary errands. A fast food stop. A trip to a thrift store. The kind of afternoon that leaves no impression on anyone watching it happen, except for the fact that prosecutors would later allege this was the very day Crystal was killed. If that's true, then somewhere between a drive-through window and a donation bin, an ordinary Tuesday became the last day of a woman's life, and no one around them had any reason to suspect it. The very next day, June the 12th, Zachariah began making a series of purchases using Crystal's debit card, without her permission. Among those purchases were chemical-resistant gloves and Santeen drain cleaner, a product containing concentrated sulfuric acid. He also bought other cleaning supplies. At the time, to a cashier ringing up his groceries, this looked like nothing. In hindsight, prosecutors would argue it was the beginning of a cover-up, item by item, receipt by receipt. 2 days after that, on June the 14th, his search history returned. This time, the question was whether raccoons eat bones. On June the 19th, he searched for a replacement passenger seat for his own vehicle, the same Mitsubishi Eclipse that would, days later, become central to the entire investigation. Through all of this, Crystal's family heard nothing. And in that silence, an entire week and a half slipped by. Crystal's stepmother had received one final text message from her on June the 11th. After that, nothing. Every call went straight to voicemail. Growing worried, she drove to Crystal's home in rural Clyman and saw her car parked in the garage, untouched. Family members told her that Crystal had supposedly gone to Michigan to visit her brother. But when that explanation was later checked, the brother said he had never seen her at all. It would take 12 days from that last text message before Crystal's stepmother formally reported her missing to the Dodge County Sheriff's Office on June the 23rd, 2024. 12 days is a long time in an investigation. It's 12 days of a trail growing colder, of memories growing fuzzier, of a suspect having time to think, to plan, to clean.
Are you Zach?
Yeah.
Oh, hi. I'm Deputy Cook with the Sheriff's Office.
Yeah.
So, the only reason I'm contacting you, I guess nobody's heard from Crystal Rasch.
No, I haven't either.
You haven't either?
No, I've been sending her messages.
Okay. So you don't know where she's at?
No.
Okay. When was the last time you heard from her?
Yeah, it was a good couple weeks ago.
A couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
Alright. You don't know anywhere she would have gone, by chance?
No.
No? Alright, and this isn't like her, I take it, to just kind of up and leave?
Well, she's done this before.
She has?
Yeah.
And then she just comes back, or
Yeah.
what? Oh.
She won't talk for a while, then she'll come back.
Is there somewhere she usually goes when she does this?
She's went to Pave,
Okay.
and she's went to Michigan. That's...
Supposedly that's what happened this time. She's in Michigan. But the family that's in Michigan hasn't seen her.
Really?
Yeah. So that's why we're where we are. But so I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. But so
she's been hanging around with a lot of people. I don't know.
Okay. But you didn't give her a ride up there or anything? Because her car's in the garage, I guess.
Yeah, I never gave her a ride anywhere.
Okay. The mom there didn't know if maybe you gave her a ride or something. But, all right. Okay. Well, other than that, that's all I got for you.
All right.
I just wanted to make sure, obviously, if you hear anything,
All right.
then reach
I
out.
was just figuring she's mad and just letting her cool off.
Did you guys get in an argument or something?
No.
No? Just mad she might be mad about something.
Yeah,
and then
she's
just,
got bipolar and yeah.
So she's done this before where she goes to Michigan and then doesn't talk to anybody for a while
She's
and then
been other
comes back.
places too.
So
but
she'll
I don't
just
know where
leave
she
for a
goes.
bit? Okay.
She's been hanging around with a lot of people, I know that.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Do you have any questions for me at all?
No, I was just letting her see if she'd give a contact back. She's done this before when she lived in Beaver Dam too.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. I will see what I can find out, okay?
All right.
All right, thank you much.
That same day, a patrol deputy visited Zachariah's property to follow up on the report. What he found there would become one of the case's earliest and most damning observations. As the deputy approached, he saw Zachariah emerging from a wooded area near a pit that was visibly smoking. Not a subtle detail. A billowing column of smoke, rising from Zachariah's own land. On the very day his missing wife's disappearance was formally reported to police. Body camera footage from that encounter would later be shown to a jury. And according to court records, Zachariah told the deputy something almost casually dismissive about his missing wife, that she had done this before. A line meant to wave away concern. A line that, in hindsight, sounds like a man trying to close a door before anyone had the chance to look through it. He did not call police to report her missing himself. He never did. It was Crystal's own family, worried by her silence, who set the investigation in motion. And once it started, it did not stop. Investigators soon discovered that in the weeks after Crystal vanished, Zachariah had made more than $6,000 in unauthorized purchases on her credit cards. It was, initially, enough on its own to arrest him, not for murder, but for unauthorized use of her financial accounts and personal identifying information. That arrest was the crack in the door. Behind it was everything else. With Zachariah in custody on the financial charges, and with a missing woman still unaccounted for, investigators pushed forward on every front at once. They pulled emergency location pings from 2 cell phones belonging to Crystal. One of them had last registered near Juneau, Wisconsin, on June the 8th. The other showed an outgoing call that had connected to a cell tower in Adams County, more than an hour from Crystal's home. That single data point pointed investigators toward land Zachariah had ties to in the town of Springville, in Adams County, and hundreds of law enforcement officers were mobilized to search it. On June the 26th, 2024, that search reached Zachariah's family property, hidden away on Wood Road. There, investigators found the Mitsubishi Eclipse, the same vehicle whose license plate had been quietly tracked across the state, and inside it, they found blood. Testing would later confirm it matched Crystal's DNA. It was the same day detectives sat Zachariah down for the 11-hour interview that opened this story. And it was the same search that, for days later, on June the 30th, led investigators to excavate a burn pit on his property, where they recovered a human tooth and fragments of bone. Months later, on October the 24th, a second, more thorough search of that same burn pit would uncover additional fragments, including a small pyramid-shaped bone from the base of the skull. Forensic testing matched it to Crystal. Her body, to this day, has never been fully recovered. There is something almost unbearably cruel about that fact. A family that finally had answers still did not have all of her back. According to a forensic anthropologist who later testified, one recovered bone, a portion of a leg, showed signs of having been substantially chewed by animals after the fact, its end appearing as though it had been cut, possibly by a saw. It could not be conclusively confirmed as human on its own. But taken together with the tooth, and everything else recovered from that pit, investigators believe the remains all came from the same person. Crystal, if this story has your attention, this is usually the point where a lot of you decide whether to keep going or step away. If you're still here, hitting like genuinely helps a small channel like this reach more people who care about these cases being told properly and respectfully. The interview that would ultimately break Zachariah Rasch's story open lasted 11 hours. On June the 26th, 2024, the same day the Mitsubishi Eclipse and Crystal's blood were discovered. Detectives Justin Cotney and Andrew Rolfe approached the interview with a deliberate strategy, sometimes called a soft interview technique. Rather than confronting Zachariah with aggression from the first moment, they built rapport. They let him talk. They let him lie, again and again, giving him just enough rope to construct a story that could later be dismantled piece by piece using hard evidence. And there was a lot to dismantle. Over the course of that single interview, detectives would later say they caught Zachariah in more than 100 documented lies about where he had been, about his work schedule, about his wife's finances, about almost everything that mattered. He claimed, for example, that he had worked his normal shift from 2 in the afternoon to 11 at night on both June the 10th and June the 11th. Employer records told a different story entirely. He had called in sick on those exact days. He never worked those shifts at all. He claimed he had never used Crystal's bank accounts. Surveillance footage and receipts proved otherwise, showing hundreds of dollars spent on chemical-resistant gloves and stain remover in the days immediately following her disappearance. He claimed Crystal was fine, that she had simply messaged him saying she needed time alone. But an anonymous tip submitted to the sheriff's office, one claiming Crystal was safe, was traced back through its IP address to Zachariah's own device. He had, investigators believed, tried to manufacture proof of his wife's safety from the very computer sitting in his own home. Detectives also noticed something in his physical behavior when they first approached him: small, almost unconscious habits, like repeatedly swatting at mosquitoes that weren't really there, or closing the hatch of his vehicle when officers got close. Small stalling tactics. The kind of behavior investigators are trained to read as deception buying itself time. But it was the license plate data, the simple, undeniable fact of where his car had physically been, that finally cracked the story wide open.
Well, yeah, only you really know that happened, so, fill us in.
I'm serious. We both came back.
Well,
Tell us about that.
Yeah. Then where is she now?
I don't know. I dropped her off in Kleinman at the church.
No, you didn't, because we didn't find her body laying in the parking lot.
I don't know where she is.
It is time for the truth, one detective told him. What did you do to her? And Zachariah's answer, delivered flatly, was this: I don't know where she is. I dropped her off at the church, and that was it. A church. A drop-off. A tidy, unverifiable ending to a story built entirely out of lies. He never gave them more than that. Not in that room, and not, in any meaningful way, ever. The state of Wisconsin charged Zachariah Rasch with first-degree intentional homicide, with a domestic abuse enhancer, and with hiding a corpse. His trial began with jury selection on June the 1st, 2026, and would ultimately run for 7 days in Dodge County Circuit Court. The state's case rested heavily on the digital trail Zachariah had left behind, the searches, the license plate data, the financial records, and on the forensic evidence recovered from that burn pit on his property. Expert witnesses, including forensic anthropologists and dental specialists, walked the jury through how bone fragments and a single tooth were matched to Crystal. The defense offered a different narrative entirely.
What did you do?
I took her and I laid her in the grass.
Do you remember where you parked at your parents' place?
Yeah, behind the red torrent.
You laid her in the grass and you opened the door and unbuckled her and put her in the grass?
Yes.
What did you do then?
I burned her
Where?
in the grass.
Zachariah himself took the stand and told the jury that Crystal had died by her own hand, that she had shot herself with a 9mm handgun, and that what followed, the burning, the concealment, the months of lies, was panic, not murder. A man, his defense argued, who made a series of terrible decisions in the aftermath of a tragedy he didn't cause. The jury did not accept that account. On Tuesday, June the 9th, 2026, after receiving the case around 3:45 in the afternoon, the jury returned its verdict at 5:56 that evening. Guilty on both counts: first-degree intentional homicide and hiding a corpse. Presiding Judge Brian Pfitzinger immediately revoked Zachariah's $1 million bail and ordered him taken into custody ahead of sentencing. Throughout the trial, and in his own testimony, Judge Pfitzinger would later observe something about Zachariah's demeanor that stayed with him. He told the courtroom he had never, in all his time on the bench, heard testimony delivered with so little emotion. Completely devoid of it, he said. Stone-faced. A man describing his wife's disappearance and death without a flicker of feeling. On July the 21st, 2026, Zachariah Rasch returned to that same Dodge County courtroom for sentencing. Before the judge handed down his decision, the courtroom heard directly from the people who had loved Crystal. Her sister, April Lee Lacasse, spoke about what her brother-in-law had truly tried to do to her sister. He hadn't just killed her, she said. By burning her almost entirely to ash, he had tried to erase her very existence, to make it so that no one could ever again point to a body and say, "This is she." Crystal's foster and adoptive mother, Heather Doherty, spoke about the 5 children Crystal left behind, children who would now grow up without the woman who should have been there to comfort them. There will be no more memories, she said. No more moments only a mother could give them. Crystal's aunt, Denise Free, described what it was like to learn that her niece's remains had been found scattered in a burned pit, calling it simply a nightmare, and asking the court to put Zachariah away forever. Judge Fitzinger, in handing down the sentence, called the crime an act of absolute depravity. He again pointed to Zachariah's stone-cold delivery on the witness stand as something that told him everything he needed to know about the man in front of him. He sentenced Zachariah Rasch to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of his wife, plus an additional 6 years for hiding and mutilating her body. Zachariah Rasch will never leave prison again. What stays with you after a case like this isn't really the burned pit, or the license plate data, or even the 11 hours in that interview room. It's the 12 days of silence before anyone even knew to look. It's a woman who had already survived so much, who was finally reaching for a life of her own, whose last ordinary Tuesday, a fast food stop, a trip to a thrift store, turned out to be the end of everything. Crystal Rasch was 37 years old. She was a mother to 5 children. She was, by every account of the people who knew her best, someone who kept showing up, even when it would have been easier not to. That's the version of her worth remembering. Not the burn pit. Not the trial. Her. If this case affected you the way it affected putting this story together, let us know with one word in the comments. Just one word that captures how this one sat with you. And if you'd like to save this story, or share it with someone who follows cases like this, feel free to copy this into the comments. Rest in peace, Crystal. Your children will know who you were. Thank you for sitting with this story, and for giving Crystal's memory the attention it deserves.